along the shimmering coastline of the Gulf of Guinea, where the waves of the Atlantic meet the historic city of Accra, a transformation of unprecedented scale is unfolding. This is the Marine Drive project, a 241-acre redevelopment scheme that seeks to reimagine the city's waterfront into a world-class tourism enclave, a cultural landmark and an architectural statement of Ghana's identity in the 21st century. It is more than a construction effort. It is the latest chapter in a story that stretches back over 60 years, interwoven with Ghana's political history, its cultural aspirations, and its urban planning legacy. Please like this video, leave a comment below, and subscribe to our channel. The Marine Drive area is not just an empty stretch of coastal land. It lies between two of Accra's most important historical landmarks, the Anglican Cathedral in Jamestown to the west and the Christiansborg Castle in Osu to the east. These points frame a stretch of coast that has, for centuries, been a place of commerce, cultural exchange, political events, and community life. Fishermen have set sail from these shores. Market women have sold their goods within walking distance of the surf, and civic ceremonies have taken place within sight of the sea. Yet for much of the post-independence era, the area has been underdeveloped, dotted with old warehouses, informal settlements, underutilized government buildings, and remnants of colonial infrastructure. The origins of a grand redevelopment scheme for this part of the city trace back to Ghana's independence in 1957. The first master plans for Accra in the 1940s had already envisioned a continuous coastal strip of public spaces stretching along the shoreline. The 1958 master plan, delivered just a year after independence, went further. It designated the Marine Drive area as a special planning unit, intended to serve as the forecourt or front garden of Accra, an open, monumental space framing key national landmarks such as the Government House, Independence Arch, ministerial buildings, and the future Parliament. This plan, drawn up by British engineering consultants Halcrow and Partners in collaboration with landscape architects Geoffrey Allen Jellicoe and Sylvia Crow, sought to clear away much of the existing mixed-use coastal community in order to impose a new vision of order, beauty, and national symbolism. In its own time, it reflected the ambitions of a newly independent nation eager to display modernity, unity, and progress. However, the 1958 plan also carried the social and political assumptions of its era. It was an urban design focused heavily on monumental government spaces, landscaped gardens, elite clubs, and sports facilities. It envisaged large-scale demolitions of existing buildings, including informal housing, commercial sheds, and old port structures. Low-income residents and small-scale economic activities, such as sand collection and informal markets, were considered incompatible with the desired image of the national waterfront. The plan envisioned these coastal spaces being used by the civil service, dignitaries, and tourists, rather than by the broader population that had historically inhabited and worked along the shoreline. In the 1960s, under President Kwame Nkrumah's socialist government, new proposals for the Marine Drive area emerged that sought to broaden its intended use. Accra had become a hub of Pan-African politics and anti-colonial solidarity, attracting architects, planners, and engineers from across the globe, from socialist Eastern Europe to Western democracies, Israel, and beyond. Some proposals remained monumental and state-focused, while others were more egalitarian, integrating spaces for cultural education, public rallies, and collective leisure. Black Star Square was expanded to accommodate massive public gatherings. Italian architects designed pavilions along the shore. A Bulgarian design institute proposed an ensemble of sports and cultural buildings embedded in the landscape. And Ghanaian students at the Kwame Nkrumah Institute of Science and Technology developed a futuristic vision called Accra 2000, which even imagined a floating platform in the ocean. Yet, for all the creative energy of this period, the Marine Drive area remained in flux. Competing visions, political instability after the 1966 coup, and economic constraints meant that no single comprehensive plan was fully realised. Portions of the coastline were developed, gardens near Osu, the expansion of Independence Square, but the grand transformation remained elusive. Over time, the area became a patchwork of uses. Some government offices, a scattering of cultural institutions, informal settlements, and vacant land subject to the encroachment of salt-laden winds. Fast forward to the early 21st century, and the idea of redeveloping the Marine Drive area returned to the national agenda. By now, Accra was a rapidly growing metropolis with swelling traffic, expanding suburbs, and a renewed interest in leveraging tourism for economic growth. The Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture saw the coastal strip as one of the city's most valuable untapped assets. Here was a location with panoramic sea views, adjacency to major civic landmarks, and the potential to become a magnet for visitors, investors, and creative industries. In 2017, the government broke ground on the Marine Drive project based on a master plan by Adjaye Associates, the architectural practice led by Ghanaian-British architect Sir David Adjaye. Known for projects such as the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., and Ghana's National Cathedral, currently under construction, Adjaye brought an international reputation and a deep understanding of Ghanaian heritage to the design. His plan for Marine Drive envisioned a waterfront promenade that would serve as a vibrant leisure and cultural space, linking the capital's most celebrated landmarks to the sea and unlocking public access to the beachfront. At the heart of the design are 3 civic anchors, each celebrating a facet of Ghana's history and identity. The first, located centrally, is a new public park extending from Independence Square down to the waterfront. This park will honour the forefathers of Ghanaian independence, culminating in a coastal overlook with sweeping vistas across the Gulf of Guinea. It will be a place for reflection, national ceremonies, and everyday leisure, a democratic space in the truest sense. To the east, near the Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Park, the plan calls for a national concert hall and a public convention centre. This cultural hub will provide venues for music, theatre, conferences, and exhibitions, supporting Ghana's growing creative industries and attracting international events. Its architecture is intended to be both modern and resonant with local design traditions, offering a stage, literal and figurative, for Ghanaian culture to engage with the world. To the west, the rejuvenated and refurbished Osu Castle will anchor the promenade. Once a seat of government and a site of deep historical significance, Osu Castle's restoration will integrate heritage preservation with new public uses, creating a dialogue between Ghana's past and its contemporary aspirations. Between these anchors, the Marine Drive promenade will unfold as a continuous sequence of plazas, gardens, commercial pavilions, and recreational facilities. Pedestrian paths will connect seamlessly to surrounding streets, while new infrastructure, roads, utilities, and flood management systems will support the development of mixed-use spaces for offices, hotels, retail, and cultural institutions. The skyline will be carefully shaped to create a distinctive image for Accra when viewed from the sea, projecting both modernity and respect for the city's historic silhouette. From the outset, government officials hailed the Marine Drive project as a way to rectify the underutilised and deteriorating condition of the waterfront, boost Ghana's tourism industry, and create jobs for local residents. The Minister of Tourism at the time, Barbara Otungyasi, emphasised that the project would also complete a vision dating back to Kwame Nkrumah's era, linking past ambitions with present capabilities. Yet, the project has not been without controversy. Ghanaian and foreign journalists, academics, and activists have voiced concerns that the Marine Drive could become a privatised enclave of elite consumption, inaccessible to the everyday citizens whose communities have historically occupied the area. Critics have pointed to the displacement of low-income residents, urban farmers, and small businesses, questioning whether the promised economic benefits will reach those most affected by the redevelopment. The government has rejected these critiques, asserting that the Marine Drive will be a public space, that resettlement and compensation measures are in place, and that the economic multiplier effects, from construction jobs to increased tourism spending, will benefit the city as a whole. Supporters argue that without significant investment, the waterfront will continue to languish, missing an opportunity to enhance Accra's global profile and diversify Ghana's economy. What is undeniable is that the Marine Drive project sits at the intersection of complex forces: heritage preservation and modern development, public access and commercial investment, national identity and global tourism trends. Its design incorporates lessons from decades of unrealised plans, yet it must also navigate the social realities and economic imperatives of the present. Even in its early stages, the Marine Drive has begun to change perceptions of Accra's relationship with the sea. For too long, the city's waterfront has been obscured, fragmented, or neglected. The Adjaye plan proposes not just physical connections, but symbolic ones, tying together Independence Square, Osu Castle, and Jamestown in a continuous civic landscape. It seeks to frame the ocean not as a backdrop, but as an active participant in the life of the capital. The scale of the project demands careful phasing. Initial works have focused on land preparation, infrastructure installation, and the first public spaces. Over time, the mixed-use developments, hotels, offices, retail, cultural venues will be added, with the aim of balancing commercial viability with public benefit. This long horizon mirrors the fact that the Marine Drive vision has itself been decades in the making. The challenge now is to ensure that when it is realised, it reflects not just the aspirations of planners and investors, but the needs and dreams of the people of Accra. To truly understand the scale and ambition of the Marine Drive project, one must first appreciate the long and complex lineage of plans, revisions, and competing visions that have been proposed for Accra's coastline over the decades. The story is not one of a single, uninterrupted master plan, but rather a succession of ideas. Some ambitious, some pragmatic, some radical, and some deeply rooted in symbolism, each reflecting the political, economic, and cultural context of its time. In the earliest colonial planning documents from the 1940s, Accra's coastline was already recognised as a valuable civic asset. The 1944 schematic master plan for the city showed a continuous strip of open spaces along the seafront. This was not merely an aesthetic choice, it was a reflection of planning ideals of the time, influenced by British urban design principles, where public access to the sea was considered a mark of a civilised and orderly city. However, these plans were abstract, with little immediate follow-through in terms of construction or detailed urban design. The 1958 master plan for Accra, delivered just a year after Ghana's independence, brought the Marine Drive area into sharp focus. Now delineated as a distinct planning unit, this coastal stretch was to be transformed into the ceremonial front of the capital. The intention was to create an impressive setting for the seat of government and other national institutions, visually and physically connected to the ocean. Government House, Independence Arch, ministerial buildings, and the planned parliament would all look out over landscaped gardens and a grand public promenade. Behind this vision lay the work of Halcrow and Partners, a British engineering consultancy with extensive experience in West Africa, alongside two acclaimed British landscape architects, Geoffrey Allen Jellicoe and Sylvia Crowe. Their approach combined large-scale clearance of existing structures with the creation of monumental open spaces and carefully designed vistas. The Accra Central Area Development Plan, part of the 1958 Master Plan, proposed demolishing over 100 buildings in the Marine Drive area, leaving only a small number of existing structures to be integrated into the new design. In their place would be government offices, sports facilities, elite clubs, and recreational spaces geared toward high-income users. Tracing these original drawings reveals the full extent of their ambition and the social impact they would have had. Footpaths used by low-income residents to access the beach for fishing, sand collection, and small-scale commerce were to be erased. Informal settlements and warehouses that supported everyday economic life were deemed incompatible with the envisioned front garden of Accra. In their place, cricket ovals, golf courses, and seaside swimming pools were planned, along with private, open spaces for clubs and associations. The tension between monumental national imagery and the lived realities of local communities has been a recurring theme in the Marine Drive's planning history. Under Kwame Nkrumah's government, this tension was addressed in part by reimagining the space to serve broader population groups. While Nkrumah embraced monumental architecture as a tool of nation-building and Pan-African identity, his administration also valued mass participation in public life. Black Star Square was expanded to host rallies and celebrations involving tens of thousands of citizens. Plans for the Marine Drive during this period included not only grand government buildings, but also public cultural facilities, sports complexes, and gathering spaces for ordinary Ghanaians. Foreign architects and planners from across the political spectrum contributed ideas. Italian designers proposed a series of coastal pavilions for public use. A Bulgarian institute envisioned a landscape dotted with large cultural and sporting buildings, arranged to create visual drama while maximizing accessibility. At the Kwame Nkrumah Institute of Science and Technology in Kumasi, Ghanaian architecture students imagined Accra 2000, a visionary concept featuring futuristic forms and even a floating platform in the ocean, symbolizing the country's leap into modernity. Other plans came from within Ghana's own planning institutions, including the Town and Country Planning Department and the Ghana National Construction Corporation. These produced more grounded, implementable designs, such as the partially realized Osu Gardens and a proposed but unbuilt mausoleum for Nkrumah. While the scale and aesthetics of these various proposals differed, they all recognized the Marine Drive area as one of the most symbolically potent and spatially valuable parts of the capital. What makes the current Adjaye Associates plan particularly notable is that it consciously draws upon this layered history. In many ways, it echoes the 1958 plan's treatment of the Marine Drive as a unified planning zone and as a ceremonial forecourt to the city. It also retains the idea of anchoring the promenade with significant civic buildings and cultural institutions. However, it diverges from some of its predecessors by integrating more mixed-use development, commercial opportunities, and explicit connections to the creative industries. Where earlier plans focused almost exclusively on governmental and elite recreational functions, the current design aspires to create an active urban waterfront that can be accessed and enjoyed by a wider public, even as it accommodates high-profile cultural and commercial venues. Still, the echoes of past debates remain. Critics of the present-day Marine Drive project have pointed to the risk that, in practice, much of the new development could be dominated by luxury hotels, upscale retail, and privatized spaces, thereby limiting genuine public access. These concerns are not unfounded, given the global trend in waterfront redevelopment, where prime coastal real estate is claimed by private interests, leaving only token public areas. Activists have warned that without strong regulatory safeguards and an inclusive design process, the Marine Drive could follow this pattern, especially given the displacement of low-income residents and informal businesses already underway. The government has responded by emphasising the project's public components. The expansive Central Park, stretching from Independence Square to the water's edge, the National Concert Hall and convention facilities, and the restored Osu Castle with its heritage-focused programming. Officials have also highlighted the economic benefits, citing job creation during construction, increased tourism revenue, and the stimulation of Ghana's cultural and creative industries as key outcomes. They point to the broader national tourism strategy, in which the Marine Drive is a flagship initiative meant to complement other attractions across the country, from Cape Coast Castle to Kakum National Park. Underlying all of this is the recognition that Accra's waterfront has been underutilised for far too long. In many cities around the world, redeveloped waterfronts have become signature public spaces, economic engines, and symbols of urban renewal. Think of Cape Town's V&A waterfront, Baltimore's Inner Harbour, or Sydney's Circular Quay. Ghana's capital, with its rich history, vibrant culture, and strategic coastal location, has the potential to join this list. The Marine Drive project is, in essence, an attempt to claim that potential. Achieving this vision will require balancing multiple priorities. Heritage preservation must be weighed against the need for modern infrastructure. Public access must be ensured even as private investment is encouraged. The benefits of tourism must reach local communities, not just large corporations. And the physical design must be resilient to the realities of climate change, including coastal erosion, rising sea levels, and increasingly unpredictable weather patterns. The design by Adjaye Associates includes measures to address some of these challenges. Landscaping and building orientation take into account prevailing winds and solar exposure, reducing energy demand and improving comfort for pedestrians. Coastal edges are being reinforced and shaped to manage wave action and prevent erosion. Public spaces are being integrated with commercial zones in ways that aim to create continuous pedestrian flows, reducing the likelihood of dead zones that can plague large-scale developments. These features reflect a sensitivity to both the environmental and social dimensions of the project. Yet, the success of the Marine Drive will ultimately be judged not just by its architecture or its economic metrics, but by the degree to which it becomes a truly beloved part of the city. Will families come to the park on weekends? Will school groups visit the cultural institutions? Will street performers and informal vendors find space alongside formal businesses? Will the fishermen of Jamestown still find ways to launch their boats and sell their catch nearby? The answers to these questions will determine whether the Marine Drive fulfills its promise as a people's waterfront, or whether it becomes another exclusive enclave. The transformation now underway is thus not merely a matter of construction, it is a live negotiation over the identity and future of Accra. For some, the Marine Drive represents the culmination of a long-delayed dream, a chance to complete what earlier generations began. For others, it is a test case for whether large-scale urban development in Ghana can be inclusive, equitable, and sustainable. The stakes are high, and the world is watching. Walking along the stretch of land earmarked for the Marine Drive project today, one might see construction sites, areas cleared of old structures, and the beginnings of landscape spaces that hint at what is to come. But in the vision laid out by the architects and planners, this corridor will one day be a seamless sequence of experiences, a place where Ghana's history and modern identity coexist in a physical space that welcomes citizens and visitors alike. The cultural symbolism built into the design is deliberate and layered. The heart of the development, the Central Park stretching from Independence Square to the sea, is not merely an open green space. It is conceived as a civic spine that connects the country's most iconic ceremonial ground to the natural horizon of the Gulf of Guinea. This axis symbolises continuity between Ghana's independence and its future. Along its length, public art, memorials, and landscaped gardens will narrate the story of Ghana's nationhood. From the colonial era and the struggle for independence to its contemporary democratic life, the park's culmination at the coastal overlook is designed to be more than a scenic viewpoint. It will be a gathering place for reflection, celebration, and communal life, a platform from which Ghanaians can look outwards to the wider world while grounded in the soil of their own country. This interplay between land and sea, history and future, is central to the concept of the Marine Drive as a national statement. To the east, the planned National Concert Hall will serve as a home for Ghana's performing arts. Its programming is expected to embrace both traditional Ghanaian music and dance and international performances, positioning Accra as a cultural destination in its own right. The adjacent convention centre will cater to large-scale events, from international conferences to exhibitions, generating business tourism that can boost the hospitality sector. By placing these facilities within walking distance of Independence Square and the Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Park, the design creates a cluster of civic and cultural landmarks, reinforcing the eastern anchor of the development. On the western end, the refurbished Osu Castle carries immense symbolic weight. Once a fortress in the colonial era, later a seat of government, and today a heritage site, the castle is being integrated into the Marine Drive as both a historical monument and a functional public space. The plan envisions museums, cultural programmes, and possibly administrative uses that will draw visitors while safeguarding the building's architectural integrity. By linking Osu Castle to the broader promenade, the project ensures that this emblematic site is not isolated, but actively participates in the daily life of the waterfront. Between these anchors, the promenade is imagined as a tapestry of experiences. Landscaped plazas, shaded walkways, interactive water features, and small performance spaces will encourage people to linger. Retail and dining establishments will offer local and international cuisines, while craft markets will provide platforms for Ghanaian artisans to reach both domestic and tourist markets. Hotels and mixed-use developments will bring in private investment, supporting the economic viability of the project while creating jobs. The economic impact of the Marine Drive is projected to be substantial. By transforming the waterfront into a premier attraction, the project aims to significantly increase visitor numbers to Accra. International tourists drawn by Ghana's coastal heritage, cultural offerings and events will spend on accommodation, food, entertainment and local goods. Domestic tourism will also benefit, as Ghanaians from other regions travel to the capital to experience the new waterfront. This influx of visitors can have a multiplier effect across sectors, from transport to agriculture, as demand for services and supplies grows. In addition to tourism, the project is positioned to support Ghana's burgeoning creative industries. With spaces for performances, exhibitions, design fairs, and festivals, the Marine Drive can become a showcase for Ghanaian talent in music, film, fashion, visual arts, and more. Creative enterprises can find new audiences and markets, while young artists and entrepreneurs gain access to platforms that might otherwise be out of reach. This synergy between culture and commerce aligns with the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture's broader goal of making creativity a pillar of Ghana's economy. However, realising these benefits depends on careful management. If rents for commercial spaces along the promenade are set too high, smaller local businesses may be priced out, leaving only multinational brands that offer little connection to Ghana's culture. If public spaces are poorly maintained, or if access is restricted by over-commercialisation, the development could lose the inclusivity that is central to its promise. Balancing profitability with accessibility will be a key challenge for the authorities and developers. The project's location on the coast also demands robust climate resilience. The Gulf of Guinea is not immune to the impacts of climate change. Rising sea levels, storm surges, and coastal erosion are realities that must be accounted for. The design incorporates reinforced coastal edges, breakwaters, and elevated structures to mitigate flood risks. Landscaping with salt-tolerant plant species and permeable surfaces helps manage stormwater and reduce runoff into the sea. These measures are critical to ensuring that the Marine Drive remains viable for generations. Regionally, the Marine Drive has the potential to place Accra alongside Africa's most celebrated urban waterfronts. Cape Town's V&A waterfront, for instance, transformed former docklands into a thriving mix of shops, restaurants, cultural institutions, and public spaces, attracting millions of visitors annually. Dakar's Corniche offers a dramatic coastal drive with public promenades and cultural sites. Lagos has embarked on its own waterfront renewal projects, albeit with mixed results. For Accra, the Marine Drive could become a defining feature of the city's international image, as recognisable as Black Star Square or the Labadi coastline. Yet, global comparisons also highlight pitfalls to avoid. Some redeveloped waterfronts have been criticised for catering too heavily to tourists and the wealthy, creating spaces that feel alien to local residents. Others have struggled with seasonal fluctuations in activity, leaving areas underused for much of the year. Learning from these cases, the Marine Drive's programming must ensure year-round vibrancy, with events, markets, and activities that draw diverse audiences. This is why community engagement remains crucial. The residents of Jamestown, Osu, and other nearby areas have a stake in the project's outcome. Their livelihoods, traditions, and relationship to the coast are part of the cultural fabric that makes the Marine Drive unique. Involving them in decisions about design, operations, and programming can help build a sense of ownership and reduce tensions over displacement or gentrification. It can also lead to innovations that reflect local knowledge, from fishing traditions to festival practices, enriching the visitor experience in ways no imported concept could. The Marine Drive project, therefore, is not simply a matter of buildings and landscaping. It is an exercise in weaving together history, culture, economy, and environment into a single urban gesture. If successful, it could redefine Accra's connection to the sea, energise its cultural life, and stimulate sustainable economic growth. If it falters, it risks becoming another missed opportunity in a long line of unrealised waterfront dreams. At its core, the project carries the weight of unfinished ambitions dating back to the dawn of Ghana's independence. Completing it is, in a sense, completing a vision that has persisted across generations, governments, and shifting urban trends. That vision, a vibrant, accessible, and iconic coastal front for the capital, is one that resonates far beyond the boundaries of the project site. It speaks to how Ghana sees itself and wishes to be seen by the world, confident, creative, and connected to its heritage. Politics has always been embedded in the Marine Drive story. From its earliest conceptualization in the 1950s to the groundbreaking in 2017 and the ongoing construction today, the project has been shaped by shifting political priorities, national identity narratives, and the interplay between vision and reality in Ghana's governance. During Kwame Nkrumah's era, urban design was more than just a matter of practical city planning. It was an expression of independence, sovereignty, and Pan-African solidarity. Monumental spaces such as Independence Square, the State House Complex, and the Accra International Conference Centre were conceived to host state ceremonies, international delegations, and mass rallies that projected Ghana's leadership in Africa's liberation movements. The Marine Drive, positioned between Jamestown and Osu Castle, was seen as an essential complement to these spaces. a literal and symbolic link between the city's historic core and the vastness of the Atlantic. However, political instability after the 1966 coup halted many of Nkrumah's large-scale civic projects. Subsequent governments faced economic constraints that shifted priorities away from monumental civic architecture toward immediate infrastructure needs. Roads, utilities, and housing took precedence, while visionary projects like the Marine Drive languished. By the 1980s and 1990s, Ghana was focused on structural adjustment and economic stabilization, and waterfront redevelopment remained largely dormant as a public priority. The early 2000s brought a renewed emphasis on tourism as a driver of economic growth. The government recognized that, beyond cocoa, gold, and oil, Ghana's cultural heritage and natural beauty could be harnessed to diversify the economy. Initiatives like the Year of Return in 2019, which invited the African diaspora to visit Ghana, underscored the potential of cultural tourism. In this context, the Marine Drive project was revived, not only as a beautification effort, but as a strategic economic development program. When the plan by Adjaye Associates was unveiled, it carried the imprimatur of a Ghanaian-born architect who had gained international acclaim. This lent the project both prestige and credibility, signalling that the design would reflect Ghanaian heritage while meeting global standards. Yet it also became a focal point for political debate. Supporters presented it as a long overdue step toward fulfilling a national vision, while opponents questioned the timing, cost, and social implications. One of the most contentious aspects has been displacement. The Marine Drive site was not an empty canvas. It was home to informal settlements, small businesses, and pockets of urban farming. These communities were part of a complex social and economic ecosystem that had developed along the waterfront over decades. For many residents, relocation meant more than losing a physical space. It meant losing access to the sea, networks of customers, and the intangible benefits of place-based community life. Government officials have stated that compensation and resettlement measures were implemented, but advocacy groups and local media have highlighted gaps in these processes. Some residents claim they were not adequately consulted or given viable alternatives. The tension reflects a larger pattern seen in urban redevelopment worldwide, where the pursuit of large-scale economic gains can clash with the rights and livelihoods of vulnerable populations. Historically, the issue of displacement along Accra's coast is not new. Even during the colonial era, coastal communities faced pressures from land appropriation for ports, administrative buildings, and elite residences. Post-independence, similar pressures emerged from state-led projects that prioritised national image over local continuity. The 1958 plans proposed clearance of over 100 structures in the Marine Drive area was, in hindsight, a precursor to the dynamics at play today. The challenge for the current Marine Drive project is to break from that history, or, at the very least, mitigate its impacts through genuine inclusion and equitable benefit sharing. Public engagement, transparent governance, and community-driven programming for the completed spaces could go a long way toward building trust and ensuring the waterfront serves the whole city. In Ghana's broader urban development strategy, the Marine Drive is part of a constellation of high-profile projects aimed at reshaping Accra for the 21st century. These include the Kotoka International Airport expansion, new road and interchange projects like the Pokwas Interchange, the development of Airport City, and planned smart city initiatives in peripheral areas. Together, these projects are intended to position Accra as a competitive African metropolis, capable of attracting global investment, hosting major events, and providing modern amenities for residents. The Marine Drive's uniqueness lies in its visibility and symbolic resonance. Unlike a highway or industrial park, it will be a daily, lived-in space for thousands of people, and a visual calling card for millions more through media and tourism promotion. Its location next to landmarks like Black Star Square ensures it will feature prominently in national celebrations and international coverage. For visiting dignitaries, the promenade could become a standard tour stop, much like the National Mall in Washington, D.C., or the Trocadero in Paris. As an urban gesture, the Marine Drive also speaks to Ghana's maritime identity, an aspect often overshadowed by the inland focus of development discourse. Ghana's coast has been central to its history for centuries, from pre-colonial trade to the tragic legacy of the transatlantic slave trade, from fishing economies to modern shipping. Reclaiming the coastline as a space of pride, leisure, and culture is therefore not just an economic act, but a cultural one. Long-term, the Marine Drive's legacy will depend on how well it integrates into the social rhythms of the city. Will it become a place where people from all walks of life feel welcome and safe? Will its public spaces be free and accessible, or will they gradually be encroached upon by commercial interests? Will its events calendar reflect the diversity of Ghanaian culture, from high art to street festivals? The answers will shape not only the project's reputation, but also the way Ghanaians relate to their capital city. If it achieves its full potential, the Marine Drive could be a defining element of Accra's 21st century identity, a landmark that embodies the nation's creativity, resilience, and openness to the world. If it falls short, it risks becoming a cautionary tale about missed opportunities and the perils of development without deep social anchoring. The responsibility for its success lies not only with architects and builders, but with policymakers, cultural leaders, and the citizens who will inhabit and shape it. The economic forecasts for the Marine Drive project are ambitious, reflecting its scale and strategic location. Government and project proponents envision it as a major revenue generator for Ghana's tourism sector, with ripple effects across hospitality, retail, creative industries, and local services. The idea is that a revitalised, high-profile waterfront will draw both domestic and international visitors in numbers far exceeding current levels, while creating opportunities for investment and entrepreneurship that extend well beyond the immediate site. Tourism authorities anticipate that once the project is fully operational, annual visitor numbers to the Marine Drive and its associated attractions could reach several million. This includes international arrivals, boosted by Ghana's growing profile as a cultural and heritage destination, and domestic tourists from other regions of the country. The Year of Return in 2019, which attracted hundreds of thousands of visitors, demonstrated the potential of Ghana's cultural narrative to mobilise large-scale tourism. By embedding the Marine Drive into this broader heritage story, the project aims to become a permanent anchor for such initiatives. The revenue streams are expected to be diverse. Hotels along the promenade will cater to both leisure and business travellers, generating room taxes and hospitality employment. Restaurants, cafes, and bars will benefit from steady foot traffic, especially if programming at the National Concert Hall and other venues draws evening and weekend crowds. Retail spaces, particularly those dedicated to Ghanaian crafts, fashion and design, can provide a platform for local artisans while adding a distinctive shopping experience for visitors. Convention and conference facilities can attract high-spending business tourists, whose expenditures often extend to accommodation, transport, and dining. Special events are another key component. Annual festivals, international cultural exchanges, music performances, and art fairs can all be staged along the Marine Drive's open spaces and within its venues. These events not only bring direct spending, but also generate global media exposure, enhancing Accra's brand as a vibrant, cosmopolitan city. The park at the heart of the project could host national celebrations, diaspora gatherings, and sports-related festivities, ensuring year-round activity rather than a purely seasonal tourist draw. Beyond tourism, the Marine Drive has the potential to stimulate surrounding neighbourhoods economically. Jamestown, with its rich fishing heritage and historic architecture, could see a revival as visitors explore beyond the formal project boundaries. Osu, already known for its nightlife and shopping, could benefit from improved connectivity and spillover demand. Small businesses, from food vendors to tour operators, can tap into the expanded market if policies support their inclusion. The challenge, as in all large redevelopments, is to prevent economic leakage, where the majority of profits are captured by a few large entities rather than dispersed through local networks. Linking the Marine Drive to Ghana's broader heritage tourism circuit is central to its long-term viability. Ghana's coastal forts and castles, many of them UNESCO World Heritage Sites, are internationally recognised for their historical significance in the transatlantic slave trade. The Marine Drive can serve as both a gateway and a complement to these sites, offering visitors a modern, comfortable base from which to explore. Interpretive centres and exhibits within the development could contextualise Ghana's coastal history, encouraging visitors to journey onward to Cape Coast, Elmina, and other historic towns. Design specifics have been crafted to ensure physical and symbolic connectivity between the Marine Drive and its surrounding neighbourhoods. Pedestrian linkages from Independence Square, the Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Park, and Osu Castle will allow seamless movement into the promenade. Streetscapes in adjacent areas are slated for upgrades, with widened sidewalks, improved lighting, and better signage to create a coherent urban fabric. Transport integration is also planned, with dedicated drop-off zones for buses and taxis, parking structures to reduce congestion, and cycling paths that connect into broader city networks. At the micro level, the design emphasises permeability. Rather than presenting a solid wall of development along the coast, buildings are to be arranged in clusters, interspersed with open spaces that maintain visual and physical access to the sea. This approach not only preserves sightlines, but also ensures that breezes and the sensory experience of the ocean permeate the development. Landscaping incorporates native plant species, shade trees, and water features to moderate heat and create comfort for pedestrians. Looking 20 to 30 years ahead, the vision for the Marine Drive extends beyond its initial build-out. As Accra grows, the waterfront can evolve to host new cultural institutions, expanded public art programs, and additional mixed-use developments. Adaptive reuse of spaces is anticipated, allowing buildings and public areas to respond to changing cultural trends, economic conditions, and climate realities. The promenade could become a testing ground for innovations in public space management, from smart lighting and environmental monitoring to digital wayfinding and interactive cultural installations. Climate resilience will remain an ongoing concern. Coastal cities worldwide are adapting to rising sea levels, and Accra is no exception. The Marine Drive's long-term survival will depend on continuous investment in coastal defences, stormwater management, and ecological restoration. Incorporating flexible, adaptive strategies, such as elevating critical infrastructure and designing landscapes that can absorb and recover from flooding, will be crucial. Success in this area could position the Marine Drive as a model for sustainable waterfront development in West Africa. If well managed, the Marine Drive could also play a role in fostering civic pride and a shared sense of ownership over public space. Ghanaian cities, like many around the world, face challenges with public space maintenance, from littering to vandalism to underfunding. A high-profile project such as this, with active programming and visible community benefits, can inspire greater public stewardship. Partnerships with schools, community groups, and cultural organisations could embed the waterfront into the daily lives of Accra's residents, making it not just a place to visit, but a part of the city's social fabric. In essence, the Marine Drive's economic, cultural, and symbolic potential is vast. but this potential will only be realised through deliberate, inclusive, and adaptive management. It must function not as an isolated enclave, but as a living extension of the city, open to its people, connected to its history, and responsive to its future. The Marine Drive project stands as both a continuation of history and a bold step into the future. It is not a sudden idea born in recent years, but the latest incarnation of a vision that has persisted for more than 6 decades. From the early colonial master plans to the bold yet unrealised schemes of Kwame Nkrumah's era, through decades of political change, economic challenges, and shifting urban priorities, the desire to create a ceremonial, cultural, and recreational waterfront for Accra has endured. Today, with construction underway, that vision is taking physical form. The land that once lay underutilised, scattered with a patchwork of informal settlements, warehouses, and government buildings, is being reshaped into a carefully orchestrated sequence of spaces, parks, plazas, cultural venues, commercial hubs, and heritage landmarks, all connected by the unifying thread of the promenade. For the first time in generations, Accra's people will be able to experience their waterfront as a continuous, accessible public realm rather than a series of disconnected fragments. But the Marine Drive is more than a matter of physical transformation. It is a statement about Ghana's aspirations and self-image. Positioned along the very edge where land meets sea, the project embodies openness. To the wider world, to new ideas, to the exchange of culture and commerce. It is a gateway, both literal and symbolic, framing how visitors experience Accra and how Ghanaians present their capital to the world. At the same time, it is a reflection of Ghana's confidence in its own cultural identity. The design incorporates elements that speak directly to the nation's heritage. References to traditional architectural motifs, spaces for Ghanaian performance arts, and a celebration of historical figures and moments in the country's journey to independence. In doing so, it avoids the trap of creating a generic waterfront development that could be anywhere. This is distinctly Ghanaian in its inspiration, even as it meets global standards in execution. The project's role in shaping Ghana's international image cannot be underestimated. In an age where cities compete for attention on the world stage, iconic public spaces play an outsized role in branding. Just as Sydney's Opera House and Harbour have become inseparable from the identity of that city, or as Cape Town's V&A waterfront serves as a signature attraction, the Marine Drive has the potential to become an instantly recognisable symbol of Accra. Images of the promenade, the Central Park stretching to the sea, the restored Osu Castle, and the gleaming new cultural venues could soon appear in travel magazines, international broadcasts, and the social media feeds of visitors from around the globe. Yet, the measure of the Marine Drive's success will not rest solely on tourist numbers or global recognition. It will rest on whether it becomes a place where Ghanaians of all walks of life feel a sense of belonging. A waterfront is, after all, a public trust, a space that should serve the needs and aspirations of the people who live alongside it. Ensuring that the Marine Drive remains open, welcoming, and representative of Ghana's social diversity will be critical to its long-term legacy. There is also the matter of stewardship. Building a great public space is one challenge. Maintaining it over decades is another. Cleanliness, safety, programming, and upkeep will require sustained investment and active management. This will mean forging partnerships between government, private operators, cultural institutions, and community groups to ensure that the waterfront does not slip into neglect or become dominated by narrow commercial interests. The most successful public spaces in the world are those that are continually cared for, programmed, and reimagined to meet evolving needs. Looking ahead, the Marine Drive could serve as a catalyst for broader coastal regeneration. Its success might inspire improvements to other stretches of Accra's shoreline, from the fishing harbours of Jamestown to the beaches of Labadi. It could also encourage greater integration of urban planning with environmental stewardship, setting a precedent for how Ghana develops in harmony with its natural assets. For the generations that will inherit the city, the Marine Drive will stand as a reminder of what is possible when vision is sustained over time, when design respects both heritage and modernity, and when development seeks to serve not only economic goals, but cultural and social ones as well. It will tell the story of a capital city that embraced its waterfront as a space for gathering, celebrating, learning, and connecting with the wider world. As the sun sets over the Gulf of Guinea and the lights of the new promenade begin to glow, one can imagine families strolling along the paths, children playing in the park, musicians performing in the plazas, and visitors pausing to take in the view from the coastal overlook. In that moment, the Marine Drive will not be just a project on paper or a political talking point. It will be a living, breathing part of Accra's identity. And perhaps, decades from now, when future planners and citizens look back on the long arc of this project's history, they will see it not only as the fulfillment of a vision begun in the mid-20th century, but as the beginning of a new chapter, one in which Ghana's capital embraced its place by the sea, and in doing so, strengthened its place in the world. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this informative and educative video, please like this video, leave a comment below, and subscribe to our channel for more documentaries about Ghana's infrastructure, innovation, and success stories. Until next time, stay inspired and keep following us on Lens Legends.